I'm going to begin with this. Parti Québécois. Stay with me now. The Parti Québécois this week introduced additional protection of the French language legislation. That is what they would say. That it's protection of the French language legislation. But it's viewed by many in the Anglophone community as simply anti-Anglophone legislation. For example, they're going to make it more difficult for students to graduate from high school, I think, from English high schools. Because in order to graduate, they will have to have I believe the word that they used was mastery of the French language. And there are other things that have been introduced in this latest language foray by the Parti Québécois. So what I've done, I'm going to talk to my guests in just a second here. What I've done is I've put together my own timeline. I may or may not be correct, but my timeline is this. 2013, Quebec election. Parti Québécois wins a majority government because of the municipal graft scandals. And by 2015, there is a sovereignty referendum. And the sovereignists win with a 55% majority. That's my view. Just my view. Now, we do know there's going to be another referendum at some point, but that's my schedule, my timeline. And later on in the program, I'm going to ask you a question I don't think has been asked on Canadian Talk Radio. But I'll introduce you to my guests first. One of them you're very familiar with, Brent Tyler, Montreal lawyer and media commentator. He joins us on issues that have to do with Quebec and the French language and the English language on a regular basis. And Brent has argued English language or language fairness issues all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. Brent, good to have you back with us.
Thanks, Roy. Good to be here.
And Jimmy Kalafatidis is a spokesman for PutTheFlagBack.com. He's chairman of the Unity Group, a Quebec civil rights group, and he's filmmaker of the documentary Angry Phone, and part 2 of Angry Phone is to come. Jimmy, it's good to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things, Jimmy, I've said, and I've been back in Quebec since 2007. I was gone for 34 years. So I came back. I was in Ontario, in Hamilton, Ontario, and I came back. And what I found, and I've said that Anglophones I find here have become almost, not all of them, but far too many of them behave like well-trained house pets. Am I right or am I wrong?
That's a very interesting question, Roy. I believe that they have behaved like well-trained house pets, but things are changing. We have something new that has come into being, I guess. Activism has changed. We have social media that's changing the game. No longer are the big, let's call it the corporations, controlling the message, telling us to behave and to, put up with it. Now we sort of, there's a new player. It's the Internet, and we're all on it, and we're all English, and the world is English. And we can embarrass them. We can stand up for ourselves. And ever since the Parti Québécois, actually before the Parti Québécois came into power, they were attacking not only the English-speaking, but the Canadians in Quebec. This is a civil rights issue. And the anger is swelling, but it's not swelling on the streets. It's swelling on the net. And from the net, we'll take it to the streets. And there's a new reality. And they're not prepared for this. They are not prepared for the Internet. Just, for example, the flag stomping that happened the other day, or actually last week. It went viral. In the past, they used to stomp on Canadian flags and nobody knew about it. Now it's gone viral. Thousands of people are seeing this. They can't hide anymore.
Yeah, and you're the chairman of Put the Flag Back, as in put the flag back into the National Assembly.
It's putbacktheflag.com, so it's putbacktheflag.com.
Yeah.
What's happening there is it's a social revolution. I mean, revolution by Facebook. Mm-hmm. Here's a page that started off just on the issue of putting the flag back into the provincial assembly. Now it's become a movement. And I got to thank Mike King, the editor, and the guy who started it all. He just started off as an initiative. Now it's become this movement. There are 11,000 followers on this page, and I urge all the Canadians in Canada to come to this page so we can send out the message to Canada and throughout the world of what's going on here in Quebec.
All right, give us the page again.
It's putbacktheflag.com.
All right, putbacktheflag.com. Now, hang on a second here, Jimmy, because I want to get to Brent and have Brent talk to us about the initiative that the Parti Québécois has put forward. And as I said, Brent, they will say it's for the protection of the French language. I look at it as really mostly anti-Anglophone initiatives, like saying you can't graduate from high school, an English high school, unless you have mastery of the French language.
Well, Roy, there's no doubt that it's a further turning of the screws. There's no question about that. But it's a lot less severe than it could have been if they'd won a majority in September. They've had to back off of a lot of the more drastic measures. For example, extending to junior colleges in Quebec the restrictions that exist on public English schools. And that would have been disastrous for these institutions because it takes 7 years to challenge these measures to the Supreme Court. So that would have been one of the measures that would have had a very drastic effect.
And we already know that at least Robert Bourassa's government used the notwithstanding clause to ignore the Supreme Court.
Well, that's always the drawback, is that even if we're successful after 7 years, it doesn't mean that a Quebec government wouldn't invoke the notwithstanding clause.
Yeah, but it was an action, wasn't it, Brent? It was a proactive move by the Parti Québécois. Again, a linguistic proactive move that sends a message to the Anglophone community in the province of Quebec.
Well, not only a message to us, but I think more importantly, a message to newly arrived immigrants that when you're given a choice of which host community to join as a new Canadian, then all of these policies are meant to direct linguistic transfers in favor of French. And there's no recognition of the English-speaking community as being a host society in Quebec. But Roy, the other things that are in this bill are quite severe. And this is in the bill. For example, 50 employees is now the threshold at which companies become subject to franchisation provisions, which means that over time they must progressively generalize the use of French throughout their enterprise. And that threshold has been reduced to 25 employees. And so that will quintuple at least the number of businesses that are subject to an extra layer now of bureaucracy that is completely unnecessary. The numbers that the PQ was showing to justify these measures actually show that the French language is doing very well in Quebec.
Mm-hmm. And Roy, I'd like to add something.
We know that. I mean, we've seen that.
Of course we know it, but it's always the reason, and ultimately it's vote getting. This is appealing to soft nationalist sentiment in Quebec. It's the game that's been going on in Quebec for a long time. Nothing.
Okay, guys, let me just do this. I have to take a break. When we come back, I want to go to what I've suggested, the timeline, at least my view of what the timeline is going to be, and then I'm going to tell my listeners what it is. The question is that I'm going to put to them at the bottom of the hour, and when we open up the phone lines, because I have a very specific question that I don't think has been asked on Canadian Talk Radio before. The issue's been talked about clearly, but this question hasn't been asked, and I'm going to put it to our callers, and I'll tell you what it is and continue my conversation with Brent Tyler, Montreal lawyer and media commentator, and Jimmy Kalafatidis, who was also the head of the Equality Party. I don't know if he's still... Jimmy, are you still the head of the Equality Party?
No, I was the last president of the Equality Party.
Okay. And chairman of the Unity Group, Quebec Civil Rights Group, and filmmaker of the documentary Angry Phones. Stay with us on The Roy Green Show on the Chorus Radio Network. You know, yesterday at this time we were talking to Marc Garneau, who is running for the Liberal Party leadership federally, wants to be Prime Minister of Canada. Generally good reviews, but I've seen, and he mentioned the National Energy Program, and I saw several emails overnight from Western Canadians saying as soon as he said National Energy Program, our hackles went up, and they said, and one in particular, I heard things from Mr. Garneau. I generally like the interview, but I heard things from him that made me think if you do that, Saskatchewan and Alberta are gone. Gone. Talking about Quebec here. Sort of. I mean, it is the core of our discussion, but it is not the entire issue, and here's why. My guests are Brent Tyler, Montreal lawyer, and news commentator. Jimmy Kalafatidis is with us as well, and I've mentioned what Jimmy does. Spokesman for. By the way, Jimmy, your email to me said puttheflagback.com. So anyway.
Sorry about that. Putbacktheflag.com. You can go to Facebook.
I was just quoting you. Putbacktheflag.com, and he's chairman of the Unity Group, and he's a filmmaker of the documentary Angry Phone. Now, what we have a a Canadian audience, mostly outside the province of Quebec. Because we don't have any radio stations inside Quebec. I happen to do the show from here, but we don't have any radio stations inside Quebec, although Quebecers do listen online. So keep in mind, guys, that we're talking to an audience outside Quebec for the most part. And here's my question that I'm going to put to our listeners, and you're both welcome to stay and participate, because there is going to be another referendum on sovereignty. In my view, 2015, just let me finish. Yep. My view, 2015, you guys may not agree with me, and you're free to tell us why not. But here's the question that I'm going to ask. Because there's every likelihood or a good possibility that I will still be in Quebec in 2015. That's not a 100% guaranteed situation, but there's every likelihood that I'd still be here in 2015. So as a resident, I would be allowed to vote in that referendum. Now, what I want you to tell me in the rest of Canada, and not just me, but I'll personalize this. When that referendum rolls around, and I go into that voting booth and I get the pencil, and I have the option of voting yes, that Quebec should secede from Canada, or no, that Quebec should remain within Canada, how do you want me to vote? Do you want me to vote as an Anglophone Quebecer? Do you want me to vote yes and side with the separatists that Quebec should leave Canada? Or do you want me to vote no, that Quebec should stay within Canada? How do you want Anglophone Quebecers to vote in the next referendum? Yes, with the separatists, because you've often told me you'd be happier if Quebec was gone out of Confederation. Do you want Anglophone Quebecers to vote with the separatists, vote yes, and assure passage of the sovereignty referendum? Or do you want Anglophone Quebecers to vote no to keep Quebec in Canada? All right. Brent, now, I know your hackles. Brent, I know your hackles are vertical.
Well, they are. They're right off the radar. Roy, first of all, we're not going to have a referendum, and here's why. Because of the work of groups like Jimmy's, and there's another group called the Special Committee for Canadian Unity that I'm part of, we're going to make it clear to the electorate in Quebec and anywhere else, for that matter, that if there is, in the event of a referendum on secession, Montreal is not going anywhere. You know, 2/3 of the island of Montreal voted no last time. And when you have the economic and cultural and social engine of the province that is so clearly desirous of staying in Canada, secession as a project is simply impossible. So we're not going to have another referendum because the rules of the game have changed. We have the Clarity Act in place, and if the federal government can show some balls, then there will not be another referendum because the result will be against the separatists. Now, if there is one, Roy, even then territory will be on the table. The Supreme Court...
Not what I was asking.
Yeah, that's right.
Not what I was asking.
I know.
Brent, the sovereignists are going to laugh at your argument. I may support it. Jimmy supports it. I support it. But they'll laugh at it.
Well, they won't. You know why?
They too, Roy.
No, 40% of the income tax, or the tax revenue in this province, comes from the 20% of the population that's non-francophone. And you have to appreciate, Roy, that I'm not talking about blood on the streets. I'm not talking about that. All we'd have to do is start a tax revolt of sufficient magnitude. We could shut the provincial government down in no time at all. And it's not unrealistic.
This is where I come back to my house pets analogy.
Well, that's right, but what I don't think you're appreciating is what Jimmy's talking about. The worm is turning here in Quebec. You know, the rest of the country has said to themselves for years, why should we fight for Anglo-Quebecers when they're not fighting for themselves?
That's true.
Let me tell you something, Roy. We are fighting for ourselves. And, you know, you talk about the Arab Spring last year. You're going to see a Montreal Spring this time. And people in the rest of the country will realize that, hey...
Jimmy, is he correct?
Roy, Brent is bang on 100% correct. Why? You got to ask the question, why should the rest of Canada care about what's happening in Quebec? I'll tell you why the rest of Canadians, because we're brothers. Over 50% of the Quebec population, they have families, they have jobs, they want to pay their share into Canada to make it the greatest country in the world. But we are held hostages here, Roy. People have to understand that there are old people here who can't move. There are people who have invested into businesses and homes. We're hostages. We can't just pick up and leave. Not everybody can do that. And I think Canadians need to unite on this issue to save the over 50% of the Canadians living in this province.
Hold on, guys. I love you guys for what you believe and how willing you are to fight. I don't know that you've got the army with you that you think you have. I hope you do. I'll put you on hold, and when we come back on the Roy Green Show on the Corus Radio Network, we'll continue with Brent Tyler and Jimmy Kalafatidis. And I'm opening the phone lines at 1-877-399-9898 right now, 1-877-399-9898. And the question is, when the next referendum happens, and I disagree with my friend Brent and Jimmy if he doesn't believe there's going to be one, when the next referendum happens, how do you want Anglophone Quebecers to vote? Do you want them to vote yes with the separatists to get Quebec outside of Canada? Many of you have told me that that's what you want. Do you want us to vote yes with the separatists to get Quebec out of Canada, or do you want us to vote no and keep Quebec, do the best we can to keep Quebec inside Canada? 1-877-399-9898. I expect some passion. We'll come back.